OneLitPodcast may contain adult language and sensitive subject matter. Please take care while listening.
Hey everyone, I'm Olivia.
Andrea.
And I'm Hayden.
And welcome to OneLitPodcast.
Woo!
So glad to have everyone. We're covering the last part of A Gentleman in Moscow, and I hope everyone liked it.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
I'm sure we'll talk more about it at the end.
And then later, Andrea's going to be telling us about her next pick and what we'll be reading next, and she'll go over that once we're done with the review. So let's just jump into it. What's everyone drinking tonight?
Andrea, you go first.
I am drinking a 2022 Southern Belle red wine. It's pretty good.
I am drinking a 2020 Bordeaux Moulin de Gassiot, and it is a French wine, a little smoky, but pretty good so far. It needs to warm up just a bit.
Nice. And I'm drinking a Beringer Main and Vine White Zinfandel with bursting juicy red berry and fresh watermelon notes. It's pretty good. It's not as sweet as I normally drink, kind of in the middle
between
dry and semi-sweet, but it's still pretty good.
I think that's where all of ours are sitting. We're moving from sweeter and sort of creeping towards that middle a little bit more.
Yeah, I normally drink like really sweet stuff, but yeah, it's pretty good. Take a sip. So, if everyone's ready, let's take the last train to Moscow.
Oh, sad.
Grab yourself a drink, snuggle up in a cozy corner, and get ready to get lit. So, we last left off with Rostov talking about the moths of Manchester and how man, like moths, have to adapt to the environment around them. So we jump to 1952. It's 2 years later, and Rostov and Sophia are walking arm in arm going to the Boyarsky for dinner. On their way to their table, they pass a table where Anna Urbanova is seated, and we learn that after her comeback to the screen, she had moved on from that to do stage performances, which is good for Rostov because now instead of only being in town a few days a year, she's now there for months at a time. So the book says he was able to chart the newest of her constellations with the utmost care. So they're still having their rendezvous, just more frequent now. And they sit waiting for their food to come out, and they start playing this game that they invented called Zoot. Mm-hmm. And it was something that they always looked forward to because both of them were very competitive and trying to win. But basically, one person would pick a category, and then they would go back and forth naming things in the category until one of them lost, and best 2 out of 3 was the winner. So, like, if the category was stringed instruments, you could say violin, cello, guitar, etc., until someone gave up. Mm-hmm. They are interrupted from their game when a man walks over. It's Professor Matej Sertovich from Leningrad State University who invited Rostov to his room after supper to have a drink and talk about his poetry. Later during dinner, Sophia mentions to Rostov that Anna Urbanova is sitting at a table over there, and why doesn't he ever invite her to dine with them? So Rostov is trying to play things off like, oh, I don't know her that well. But Sophia says, Marina thinks you like to keep all your relationships with your friends in their own separate boxes, but Anna thinks it's because you're set in your ways. So Rostov chokes on his wine, and he's like, how do you know what she thinks? Do you know her? To which Sophia responds that, yes, they have been acquainted for years now. Rostov is surprised and slightly annoyed. So he's like, well, why don't you invite her to dinner, and you, Marina, and Anna can all have dinner together since you like to gossip about me. And Sophia responds, that's what Andre suggested. And when she says this, Andre saunters over to ask how everything was for them tonight. So Rostov says, still annoyed, the food at the Boyarsky is superior and the service is excellent, but the gossip, it is truly unsurpassed. He stands and says he is expected upstairs. Getting away from all you gossiping gals, plus Andre. So on his way upstairs, who should he meet but Anna? So he's like, do you think it's appropriate to strike up a friendship with my daughter behind my back? So Anna's like, what? Our meetings just happened to be while you worked. So Rostov was like, well, I'll have you know that I have an appointment with a very eminent professor, which, by the way, will necessitate the cancellation of any further appointments this evening. Like, I'm sorry, I have to cancel our booty call tonight. Why don't you hang out with your new friend, Sophia? So Rostov goes to the professor's room, which happened to be his old rooms, which he hadn't stepped in over 25 years. But it still looked the same, if not a little worn down from the years. He walked into the sitting room and notices another man standing by the windows. It's Richard Vanderwaal, whom he hasn't seen in 2 years. We then find out that the talk with Professor Sirovich was a ruse, and that it's Richard who needed to talk to Rostov in private. He says that since the war, even though things haven't always been chummy between their two countries, things have been predictable, with them forming NATO and then Russia forming the Common Form, America making an atomic bomb and then Russia building one. Just like when one of them creates something, then the other one will create their own plan or group or whatever, mirroring it. But Richard says that with Stalin being 1 foot in the grave, they're concerned who the next successor will be. Depending on who ends up in charge, the doors of the city could either be flung open to the world or slammed shut and bolted from the inside. And this is June 1952, and we know Stalin dies March 1953, so less than a year until his death, and we have a new successor. So Richard tells him that he is taking a new position in Paris in the intelligence field, and they're looking for some friends who may be able to shed some light on this or that. And Rostov stops him right there, saying, "Surely you're not asking me to spy on my country." To which Richard replies to think of it more as gossiping about this or that and the people involved. But Rostov stops him and is like, "I am no more inclined to gossip than I am to spy, so let's drop this and remain friends." So Richard is like, "No problem." And they spend the rest of the night talking. So, like, good on Rostov. He could have easily turned on his country, like the country that had turned their back on him all those years ago. But even though he is still confined to this punishment where his only crime was being noble, like, he still has such love for his country, and he's just like, "I'm not gonna be a spy."
Right.
So 9 months later, Stalin does die, and there's a grand funeral where millions of people come and line up to pay respects for him. Many of them mourn the loss of the man who had led them to victory in the wars against Stalin. They mourned for the man who had made Russia a world power, and others wept in recognition that a new era of uncertainty was upon them. Richard's predictions were right, and there was no one to succeed Stalin. So, with much back and forth, it basically came down to Khrushchev as the first secretary of the Communist Party, and then this guy named Malenkov as premier of the Soviet Union. And they were kind of like in charge in tandem, it sounds like, but it was this like delicate balance because they had opposing views. So it was very up in the air for a little bit, like who's actually pulling the strings in Russia. Even though he had said he would not be taking any appointments for the night, Rostov found himself later in the bed of Anna Urbanova, and they're talking about what he and Richard were just discussing. After Stalin, is Russia going to continue to keep its borders open to the rest of the world, or will they be closed? Rostov hopes for the latter because there are so many good things that other countries have brought them, be it music or food or theater. But Anna says you can't help bending to the latter in Russia because whereas all these big cities that Rostov is talking about are port cities, and they kind of thrive off of culture from other areas, Moscow is inland, and the Kremlin, which is like the epicenter of Russia, is in the center and casts a shadow across the entire country. And then they start talking about America, and Rostov tells her that it sounds like she's dreamed of living in America, and she's like, everyone dreams of living in America because of the conveniences.
Yeah, they have dishwashers.
Yeah.
Washing machines, vacuum cleaners.
Oh, yeah, like the
television.
Automatic garage doors. And he's like, what's an automatic garage door? So he's like, you don't need that. But yeah, and then Rostov says that what used to be convenient was sleeping until noon and then someone bringing you breakfast in bed, or keeping a carriage waiting at the door to a party so it could whisk you away to another at a moment's notice. But in his position, he doesn't have use for conveniences, so it's the inconveniences that matter to most to him.
Yes.
And then we go to Rostov, who is in his rooms pacing. and he's waiting for someone or some people to come back from a performance, like checking the clock, and he's like, they should be back by now. It's almost 1:30. He had hidden a bottle of Dom Perignon because there was a possible celebration going on too, and he wanted to be ready. But we don't know what all the fuss is about right now.
I know. At first, when I read this, I was like, oh, she's like getting engaged or something.
Oh, you thought she was getting engaged.
Yeah, and he was like, oh my God, why are they out so late?
Yeah, I wasn't sure what the thing was at first. But it's like some kind of celebration. And then he hears the clock toll out 12 midnight. And he's like, apparently I was wrong on what time it was. Even though I could have sworn I've been waiting longer. And then we find out that the rest of his day apparently has been very exasperating. So we jump earlier in that day. At the Boyarsky, the manager of the hotel was trying to implement a new procedure for the taking of orders, which included this really weird, long process where the waiters had to take down the order, take that to the bookkeeper, who would take it to the kitchen, where an entry had to be made in a cooking log before you could start cooking. Then when the food was done, a slip had to be given to the bookkeeper from the kitchen, who would then give a stamped receipt to the waiter saying the food was ready to be taken to the table. And then the waiter had to make a note saying the food indeed had made it to the table.
And if you're thinking this is a terrible idea, it is.
It is. Yeah, Rostov doesn't like this. And he says, I expect something like this from the Piazza, but not from the Boyarsky, where the waiters are always attentive and they strive for excellence. Because after their first seating, it said that like people were confused, and with all the papers, he likened it to the floor of a stock exchange. And then worst of all, people's food was coming out cold.
Yeah.
So he sees the bishop in the hallway, and he goes over to him, telling him that this will not do. But the bishop basically tells him that as the manager of the hotel, he is required to keep vigilant attention to eliminate all discrepancies, to which Rostov finds out he means thievery.
Yeah.
So it's like, is he kind of thinking the staff of the Boyarsky are skimming off the top a bit? Like,
right.
Especially Rostov, Emil, and Andre, because they have their little, like, daily meetings and everything. And then Rostov goes and says that he will take it up with the other two at their daily meeting, to which the bishop responds, you have a daily meeting? So
For years.
So now this guy is going to be infiltrating their meetings like blabbermouth Rostov. So then we jump back to Rostov in the study, and he's waiting, and then Anna and Sophia come into the room all excited. We find out that Sophia had entered into some kind of musical competition in her school, and that she had won. Everyone else had played something by a Russian composer, but she played some Mozart. And then in their celebrations, they hear someone in the bedroom, because they're in the study right now. Right. So it's like, who is it? Rostov sneaks out very quietly, and he spooks Emil and Andre when he pops his head out of the closet. Emil was holding a cake for Sophia, which he drops, but then Andre, who is an old juggler, is quick on the catch and saves it. So they're flabbergasted and ask Rostov, what in the world is he doing in the closet? So for the first time, Rostov leads his friends into his secret study, and Rostov and Andre talk about the first night Rostov was there and how they had toasted with Marina and Vasily. Upon saying his name, who appears at the door to the secret study but Vasily, who is unsurprised by the secret room. He pulls Rostov away and tells him that the bishop and another man were on their way up to his room and would be there any second. So Rostov tells everyone assembled to not make a sound, and he returns to the bedroom and closes the closet door just in time to hear the knock on his door. It's the bishop and a man he introduces as Comrade Franovsky. Franovsky says he is the director of the Red October Youth Orchestra and that he is here to offer Sophia a position as their second pianist. And he had been in the crowd for her performance. Rostov says that it's wonderful news, but then on hearing that she would have to go to Stalingrad, which was 600 miles away, he apologizes and says Sophia would not be interested. Franovsky says...
In the offer.
Yeah. Franovsky says that he's sorry, but they have a summons letter, which basically is forcing Sophia to report to the orchestra while it's masquerading as like ooh, you're so welcome to join us if you want, but like you have to.
You have no choice.
You're
coming.
Yeah, you have no choice. You have to come.
And the bishop's like,
yeah, the bishop is all because the bishop hates Rostov, so he's like all smug, like, haha, gonna take away your daughter.
What? It's so messed
She's
up.
gonna be. I know.
Yeah, this is definitely super, super messed up.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that he would go that far.
I don't think that he like had any hand in it or anything.
You think he's just enjoying the moment?
Yeah, like he found out about it. It's just like, haha, like, I want to see the look on his face
I got
when he
you.
finds out he's gonna lose his kid.
Yeah, that's why.
Hilarious.
Yeah, that's why he was like, I decided to personally escort him up here.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You're a bitch.
To give you the great news.
Give you the great. Isn't that great news? Your daughter.
Yeah, he says that. He's
Forced
like,
to join this orchestra.
This is a great opportunity, Rostov.
Mm-hmm.
She'll be second piano.
Yeah.
And this is when Anna decides to come out the closet.
Yeah.
Lay it on thick.
Yeah, so before Rostov starts letting his fist fly,
Which he was about to, yeah.
Yeah, Anna Urbanova walks out of the closet, surprising them all. And as they're staring at her, she's like, it looks as if you've never seen a beautiful woman step from a closet before.
Which he responds, I haven't.
But she tells the men that actually the Minister of Culture was telling her last night how he had great plans for Sophia in the capital, which this is all a lie. Like, she hasn't met with the Minister of Culture at all. And that actually she would be staying in Moscow. So on hearing this, because, you know, like Anna's an actor and everything, so they take her for her word and everything. So they begrudgingly leave, which leaves the rest of the little band to celebrate the rest of the night. And then after a while, they all decide to go down to the piazza for more drinking and dancing. And while they're going down the stairs, Rostov notices a woman standing in the shadows. And he tells everyone he will be down presently. And when they leave, she steps out. It's Katerina, the woman who Mishka had lived with for a while before she left him for another man. And then we get a bomb dropped on us with the news that Mishka is dead, but she had been with him when he died.
Yeah, she'd been, I think it was a few weeks that she'd been there with him.
Because, her husband, she had gotten married, and then her husband had died. And it was like, it was either a couple weeks or a couple months previously. He had contacted
been together
her
for the last 6 months.
Yeah, so they kind of like had made up after her husband had died and he was really sick and everything. So they're talking about his death and everything. And Rostov,
I was going to say, I found this part really great because she says, yeah, he was a great poet, one of the two of you.
Yes.
Where Rostov says, I've never written a poem in my life.
I'm getting
and
there.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So they're talking about how like good of a man Mishka was and everything. He was a great poet. And Katerina says, well, one of two, and looks at him. Rostov smiles at her and says, I've never written a poem a day in my life. And then we're dropped with another bombshell, the political poem from the very beginning of the book.
That he was on house arrest.
The one that got him sentenced to life at the Metropole in the first place was actually written by Mishka. And they said that they originally used Rostov's name because, like, who was going to do anything to a prominent count, like, at the time and everything?
They wouldn't go after nobility.
They wouldn't go after nobility, but the Tsar's secret police at the time would have arrested Mishka if he had written it under his name.
They probably would have killed him.
Yeah, exactly. So Rostov says, like, that's what happened. But honestly, like, he says how grateful he was that it had happened because if it weren't for that poem attributed to him, then those Bolsheviks would have taken and shot him like so many other nobles at the time. Because, and like, I'm not good with poetry or anything. I thought that it was like an anti-revolution poem, but I guess some people didn't see it as that, so they thought it as like pro-revolution.
Mhm.
So I think that's like one of the reasons why people were just like, well, like some people think you're trash, but other people think you're a hero because of this. So like we're gonna not kill you, but we're just gonna like, set you to house arrest and everything. So he's basically saying that like this poem saved his life and everything. So after this news, Katerina gives Rostov a package, and it was Mishka's project that he had been working on for years now, and he had told her to bring it to Rostov after his death. Then
This is funny.
Yeah. Then Katerina leaves, telling Rostov to always remember Mishka. So Rostov then opens the package to find a book called Bread and Salt, and he starts reading it, and then he starts laughing because the only thing in this book was quotes from famous works that involved the word bread, which he had printed in bold letters. And the book ends with the quote about bread from Chekhov that Mishka had to censor all those years ago.
Which, I was going to say, she said that he slaved over this.
I mean, he was working on it for years.
Yeah, I just thought it was really
Well, he had to start working on it once that incident with the editor happened.
Right, yes, okay.
But
after he got back from Siberia.
It's not what I expected it to be at all.
Yeah, I know, me neither. Which I didn't know what I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
It was just petty.
Yeah, it was definitely a petty, like a final, like, F you. I'll write this book about bread if I want. And he, like, literally took, like, almost, because, I'm sure it took years and years, because he basically started from, like, the very beginning of time, starting with, like, quotes from the Bible, like, working his way through, like the Middle Ages, like, working his way through history with different quotes. He had, like, a big section of, like, Russian literature that involved bread.
Dostoevsky.
Yeah, there's 3 from Dostoevsky.
Yeah, Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, like,
Anna Karenina.
Yeah. So there's a ton. So it's just like, F you. Yeah, so there's that. So then we move on. The little trio of the Boyarsky is having their daily meeting. We find out that in 6 months, Sophia will be headed to Paris because of the cultural relations with foreign countries. Russia has now adopted where they're sending their artists all around the world. And as they're talking, who walks in but the bishop, who has indeed started joining them for their daily meetings. So he goes over the menu and makes changes to Emil's menu. And then when talking about how the flower arrangements are wilting, he suggests to Andre that they start using fake flowers if they cannot procure sufficient fresh flowers. So they all disperse and go off to do their separate things. And Rostov kind of like fakes leaving, but he stays back and opens the book that has all the reservations in it. And he's going through all the dates and who will be there until he comes across the date of June 11th, where there will be a combined dinner of the Presidium and the Council of Ministers. So he makes a note of this and goes back up to his room. And for the first time in almost 30 years, he opens one of the hidden doors in the legs of the Grand Duke's desk. And Rostov says that it is time to take action. For what? We don't know. He then goes down to the bar, and after a little while, Victor Stepanovich, Sophia's old piano tutor, had come up behind him and starts going off on him, saying, I know you're protective of your daughter, but I think you're making a huge mistake, and her chances of receiving a worthy position will only be hampered by your decision. So Rostov is like, whoa, like, what are you talking about? So Victor asks, wasn't it Rostov's idea for her to withdraw her name from the orchestra that's going on tour to Paris? Rostov is flabbergasted and says she must have made the decision for herself for some reason. Probably just her being nervous about going, but they'll talk to her about it. When they finally get together and he asks about it, Sophia says that she simply doesn't want to go. She likes it here at the Metropole with him. So Rostov tells her that He has done her a great disservice by making it seem like the metropole is just as wide and wonderful as the rest of the world, and that he's so proud of her making her own way in the world, and he wants her to see what's out there. So Sophia says that if she is to play in Paris, she only wishes he could be in the audience to hear her, and he says, "Were you playing on the moon, I would hear every chord." So sweet. I want Rostov to be my dad. One day in March, Rostov goes downstairs and writes a note on a bit of hotel stationery. Then he slips it onto the bellhop's desk when no one is looking, and he goes to his daily meeting at the barber. At the barber, he asks for a trim and a shave, and while the barber is working, a bellhop comes in and says there's an urgent message for him from the manager. The barber reads it, the words saying, "Come see me immediately." He tells Rostov he will be right back, and Rostov tells him to take his time. But as soon as he hears his footsteps receding down the hall, he jumps into action. And then we find out that he's been very busy these past few months making sure that Sophia is ready for her trip, getting travel necessities, making her a nice dress for the concert, going over her French with her, etc. So after the barber goes out the door, Rostov goes over to the cabinet over in the corner where the old barber, Yaroslav, had all this stuff, and after moving things around, he finally finds what he's looking for, a little black bottle that Yaroslav had referred to as the Fountain of Youth. So he slips that into his pocket, along with a razor that had been laying on the counter, and he sits back in the chair just as the barber came back into the room, grumbling about wasted time. So back in his room, Rostov puts the vial in his dresser, and then he takes the razor and uses it to cut out this map of Paris from a travel guide that he had found in the basement. And then he takes a pen and starts making a line through the streets from the Avenue George V to Rue Pierre Charon and down the Champs-Élysées.
I think that was pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Élysées. Champs-Élysées. Then he takes his father's old book of Montaigne and uses the razor to remove some of the pages. So he's hollowing out the book to have a secret compartment. Put stuff in. One evening in May, Rostov is sitting downstairs reading a newspaper when he spies this young couple coming from the elevator and going out the door. And Rostov is like, he's seen them leave the hotel at 7 every night to take in the nightlife. And when they leave, Rostov starts to head upstairs. Now, he had seen the couple give Arkady their suite key to room 428, so Rostov heads to that room where he uses Nina's old key to get in. And he goes to the closet, he takes a pair of pants and a button-down shirt, stuffs them into a pillowcase, and sneaks out the room. Later, he's at the bar looking over a checklist that he had written down. The gold coins from his desk, Paris travel guide, the vial from the barber shop, the clothes he had taken, and some needle and thread. And he said there was one more loose end to attend to, the matter of notice, but he was prepared to proceed without it. So now we kind of see he's planning on breaking out of this joint. Like, it seems pretty clear that's what he's going to do. But he's having a drink, and I love there's this mention of this American guy here, Pudgy Webster, who's trying to sell vending machines, but everyone knows he's not going to sell any. And the book says a vending machine had as much chance of selling in the Kremlin as a portrait of George Washington. So this guy isn't getting like any appointments with people until he starts bringing American cigarettes and candy to butter people up. But then it says, the salesman who had not been able to secure an appointment was suddenly welcomed into 100 offices with open arms and ushered out empty-handed. So it's like
They took his chocolate and his cigarettes and said, no thank you.
They're all just taking his stuff and then like, no, we're not interested in vending machines. Like, sorry. So like, poor him. But anyways, after midnight, Pudgy makes his way to his room where he finds Count Rostov waiting for him. And at first he thinks he's in the wrong room, but Rostov says, no, he has been waiting for him. He has a letter that needs to be delivered to Paris to a certain someone he thinks he knows. And we find out later that he's trying to get a letter to Richard and everything. So leaving Pudgy's room, Rostov continues on until he gets to room 428, which is the same room he had been in earlier and had stolen those clothes. Since he's been watching them and he kind of knows when they should be back, he's like, well, it'll still be about 30 minutes before they return. So he goes back in because he was originally thinking of taking a hat earlier, but he didn't. So he changed his mind and was going to go back to get it. So he sneaks in again, takes the cap, and then he looks in the closet on the shelf, and there's something wrapped in paper and tied with some string. And being a nosy Nancy, he opens it to find it's a Matryoshka doll, or one of those little Russian nesting dolls.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, this is a cute little trinket to take back home. It's also a good place to hide something. So he starts opening the nesting dolls one after another.
In a panic.
Yeah, and before he can open the last one, he hears a key in the lock. And it's the Italian couple who were back a little earlier than he expected. So he hurriedly rushes into the closet and has to wait there while he hears them getting ready for bed. And then they read a little in bed before finally turning off the lights and going to sleep. He's like, okay, how long is it actually going to take them to fall asleep, though?
Yeah, and then he says, by the grace of God, this fine-looking couple opted for rest over intimacy.
Yeah, it's like, oh, thank God.
I'm not in here having to listen to
that. Yeah, he's just in the closet. He had to, it's like a small closet, so he's like in an awkward position. He's like, my neck is killing me, and I'm gonna have to pee soon. And then we get a little scene.
Yeah.
It's actually in Italian, and I took the liberty of translating it. So it says, what was that? Honey, wake up. What? There's someone in the room. Bump. Who's there? Rostov says, excuse me. Claudio, turn on the light. Bam. Rostov again. Excuse me. Crash. And then he says, arrivederci. As he runs out the door. So yeah, Rostov is able to sneak out with them none the wiser. Got those ninja moves.
Scusa.
Yeah. Excuse me. We then go to Anna's room, where Marina unveils the dress that her and Sophia have been making for her to take to Paris. And this is obviously like the next day or a couple of days. Yeah. It's not like right after that. So they made her a dress. It's a beautiful blue dress that Sophia looks fabulous in, and Rostov is speechless, and he's thinking back to her transformation from child to beautiful woman who don't need no man. She got herself. And she does a little spin, and Rostov notices that it's a backless dress.
Low cut back.
Scandalous. So at first he accuses Anna and is like, I assume this. I love this. I assume this dressless dress was your idea. But Marina says, actually, it was my idea. My design, made by my handiwork. If you don't like it, then why don't we just dress her in a sackcloth? But Rostov resigns his nitpicking when Sophia says how magnificent it is. And then they finish off the piece with a beautiful sapphire choker.
Well, they say, it's missing something. It needs something. And then Rostov goes, a cape.
A cape. Yeah. He's like, cover yourself up. Oh, yeah. They talk about, it's like, she's going to be playing for an audience. They don't have to see, like, every divot of her spine.
Yeah, they're going to be so distracted by her spine they don't listen.
Yeah, he's a dad.
Yep.
Rostov then goes to his daily meeting for the Boyarsky, and the bishop asks how things are going for the dinner for the Presidium and Council of Ministers. Andrei says everything is in order. They're actually having it in room 417. Emil has arranged the menu, and Rostov will be overseeing it and has been working with Comrade Prop, who is the liaison from the Kremlin. The bishop says that given the importance of the event, he thinks Andrei should attend to the dinner, and Rostov can stay at the Boyarsky that night. But on making that decision, Rostov goes cold, for he had tailor-made the dinner to his intentions, and this would ruin everything. So as they leave, they're going back upstairs. Rostov holds Andrei back and asks if he can spare a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Then we jump to June 11th, 6:45. Rostov stands in suite 417, dressed in the white jacket of the Boyarsky, making sure everything's ready for the supper that night. And it says, 11 days earlier, he had been dismissed from this dinner, but the day before, Andre had come to the daily meeting with some terrible news. He had been experiencing a tremor of the hands and could not see to the dinner. But not to worry, because Rostov is there, and he can take over. In fact, he had contacted Comrade Prop and was relieved, or Comrade Prop, who was relieved that Rostov would be serving them that night. And on talking to Comrade Prop, Rostov is thrilled to find out that there is no seating arrangement. So he goes into, like, the head of the table is usually reserved for the most powerful, while those at the end have the least importance.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, oh, to invite 46 leaders of a political party and have them sit at a U-shaped table without having a seating chart, it's going to cause some disorder. And he thinks that what will happen is that everyone will come in and take their seats, but this quote-unquote random arrangement will actually tell the hierarchy of the political party. So it's like, if you don't have, like, name places at a table, he's just like, ooh, like, I'm gonna see, like, how people actually, like, rank themselves and everything.
Who thinks they have the most pull?
Who thinks they have the most pull? So the doors open, and the 6 people seated at the head of the table are Khrushchev and Malenkov at the 2 center seats. So like we said earlier, these are the people basically in charge. And then the other party members were Volganin, Mikoyan, Molotov, and Voroshilov. And then we get a little blurb at the bottom saying that there were originally 8 Pinnacle party members, but Kaganovich was sent to preside over a potassium factory in Ukraine, and Beria was decorated by the party with a pistol shot to the head.
Oh.
And it's dark, but I love that phrasing. So they're having their dinner, having a grand old time, and Rostov is refilling glasses and bringing out courses, and the little narrator is like, did Count Rostov overhear any of the private exchanges going on around the table? He heard every single word.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, a waiter. I get to go around and listen to everyone's gossip. What are they actually talking about? And towards the end of the night, there was an announcement for everyone to make their way to the windows, and a man, Malishev, was there and informed everyone that the new power plant in Obninsk had become operational 6 months ahead of schedule, and that tonight the plant will be providing power to half the city of Moscow. So Rostov and the other waiters start snuffing out the candles until everyone is standing in the darkness, and they see the lights of Moscow go out. And they wait a few minutes until they see the light come back on in the distance, and they get closer and closer until the chandelier above them burns bright with electricity from the first nuclear power plant in the world. And this was a grand event, but the problem was that they didn't tell anybody about the blackout. So Rostov says TVs went black, people banged their shins into coffee tables, people out driving, looking up at the suddenly darkened buildings, ran into people in front of them. And Anna and her fellow actors were in a play that night, so they had to improvise what their characters would be saying during a blackout. And then at the Metropole, 2 waiters at the piazza ran into each other, spilling their food. There were people stuck in the elevator, even. But the Boyarsky, where for 50 years the ambience had been defined by candlelight, kept going without interruption. On the 15th of June, Rostov had sat down with Sophia, and he had told her about his plan that he was putting in motion, and tells her that he hadn't told her until now because he knew she would object to it. And she's like, yeah, I do. But eventually she's like, okay. So it's the next day, and Rostov is making sure everything's in order when Sophia comes in and says they've changed the venue in Paris to this new place. So he's like, no worries. He gets a second Paris travel guide and makes a new map on it, like the one he had done previously. After this, they go into the study, which Rostov had decorated all nice for Sophia's last day there, and they have a fancy dinner in their room. So they have some soup, and then Sophia notices a little statue of a girl on the table, and she's like, what's that? So she picks it up and realizes it's actually a bell, And when it rings, Andre comes in through the door of the study with their entree, which Emile has named Goose a la Sophia, where the goose is hoisted in a dumbwaiter, chased down a hall, and thrown from the window before being roasted, going back to the little stunt she pulled when she was 13.
Mm-hmm.
So they spent the night retelling old stories like that, and then they like talk about the time Anna had thrown all of her clothes out the window, which I guess she had told Rostov later. And he says that he didn't want to messy up the dinner with talks of her leaving or give her any advice. He had done that last night because this night, their last night here together, he wanted to fill with comforting stories to put her at ease. Then, after supper, he gives her a photograph. And it's a photo of him and Mishka that had been in that package with Mishka's project in it that Katerina had given him. And it was of the two of them taken years and years ago. And Rostov was like wearing a top hat and has these big fancy mustaches. And he's like, I know you treasure the picture of your parents, so I figured you may want one of me, and it's the only one I have. So she laughs because of how ridiculous he looks in the picture, but she says she's going to treasure it. Then she asks him whatever became of his mustaches. So he tells her the story of what happened in 1922, and he said that it was actually that incident that made her mother approach him for the first time to ask him what had happened to his mustaches. Then Sophia asks him if he ever regrets coming back to Russia after the revolution, and he thinks for a second, but then he says that life had needed him to be in a particular place at a particular time, and that was when Nina had brought her to him, so no, he does not regret it one bit. Then at 10 o'clock, Marina comes in to take Sophia away. They walk down the stairs, and everyone gathers to see her off. Rostov, Marina, Emile, Andre, Arkady, Vasily, and Audrius. They wish her well and say they can't wait for her to come back and tell them all about it. Then Rostov takes her aside, father and daughter have one last hug, and she walks out the door. Rostov then goes back up to his rooms, and he's like, it already seems so quiet without her. So he gets ready for bed, and even though she's gone, he still sleeps on the mattress under the bed springs. So I guess he really was sleeping on the floor. Mm-hmm. I know that we were talking about that last week or the week before, like not really knowing how like the setup of the bed and everything. But I guess he had put those like cans of tomatoes under the bed, and then he had put his mattress on the floor.
Right.
I know we were talking about it. We were like, how did he loft the bed? Right.
And I'm still having trouble
visualizing
that.
Yeah, me too.
But now it's a TV show, so we'll be able to see.
Yeah, exactly. I'm watching it. We then have another meeting with Rostov and Osip, and it talks about how they had been meeting up like once a month for years, but things kind of like fizzled out to where they hardly saw each other at all now. But one night when Osip was at the Boyarsky with someone, Rostov stops him and says they should watch a movie next week like they used to. So here they are watching Casablanca, and Rostov is thinking of Sophia during the movie, of her in Paris, and particularly about all the chaperones there, like 2 members of the conservatory staff, 2 representatives from Vox, which is like a foreign relations representative, a cultural attaché, and 3 chaperones in the employ of the KGB.
Chaperones in quotation marks.
Yeah, quote-unquote chaperones. Then we jump to Rostov waiting at a couple at the Boyarsky, and he finds out they're from Finland, and then he says, before I take your order, would you be so kind as to give me your room number? The next line says, from the beginning, the Count had determined that he would need to filch a few things from a Norwegian, a Dane, a Swede, or a Finn. So he's gonna steal something from their room like he did the Italian couple.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out that what he's planning on taking is the man's passport. And that Rostov had to wait until the last minute to get this because, like, you're gonna notice your passport gone.
Right.
So here he is 24 hours before he's planning on leaving because, you know, it's what he's doing at this point. As soon as he started acting all suspicious and stealing things, I was like, he's going to make a break for it.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, after the Boyarsky closes, he sneaks up to their room, leaving his shoes outside the door so he won't wake them. because they had said they were exhausted and wanting to go to sleep. So he sneaks in, steals the passport and a bit of money, and goes back outside to notice that his shoes are gone. He's like, gosh darn it. I guess the night service picked them up for shining. But he's like, whatever, and goes upstairs. Now when he opens his door, who does he see sitting at his desk but the bishop?
No!
Who had opened his desk and was holding that first travel guide to Paris that he had marked with directions to the American embassy. So he looks at Rostov and says, you truly are a man of many interests. Wine, cuisine, the streets of Paris. So Rostov tries to play it off as he had been reading something about Paris and was trying to reacquaint himself with the layout of the city. And the bishop is like, all right, and leaves. So, shit. So, the book asks, like, what was the bishop thinking as he walked down the steps? Perhaps gloating? Having been belittled by Rostov for years, he now felt he could finally put him in his place, or righteousness, or satisfaction. Whatever it was, imagine the emotion he felt when he opened his office door to find Rostov, whom he had left in the attic minutes before, now sitting at his desk with a pistol in his hand. What happened was, after the bishop had gone, Rostov leapt into action and flew down the main staircase to the executive offices, where he let himself in using Nina's key. Then he had gone to the wall and counted a few spots over from the Karl Marx picture was, and popped open the panel, which he had done years ago when Mr. Hallecky was manager. And whenever he had done it all those years ago, we knew that there was something behind that panel.
Yeah. He didn't tell us what.
Yeah, we didn't know what it was at first. So the thing inside the panel that he never mentioned was a box that had 2 pistols in it. So if you remember the story of the manager who always kept a set of pistols on hand at the hotel in the event someone challenged someone to a duel, those are the pistols. So the bishop comes in and notices him and says that he has no business being there. Rostov points the pistol at him and tells him, in his best Chris Hansen voice, to have a seat. But when he doesn't do it, Rostov takes the pistol and shoots the portrait of Stalin that's on the wall.
Right between the eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
On that note, he sits, and Rostov says that now they wait. So he plans to wait until 2:30 in the morning when he knows that the hotel should be quiet in every corner. And then the bishop starts degrading Rostov and saying that his sort have always been convinced that they're in the right and that God has just blessed him and everything he does. But this time, it's over. And when his actions come to light, he'll be punished. And Rostov is kind of confused, what sort? What privilege? I've been living under house arrest for over half my life now. But one phrase had caught his attention. The bishop said that things will come to light. So he stands up and goes over to some file cabinets that were locked. So he makes him give him the keys, and inside he finds all these files on almost everyone from the hotel. So it has Emil, Andre, Marina. It even has guests who had stayed there. Just accounts on human flaws, tardiness, drunkenness, etc. So he puts all the files of his friends on the desk, and then he goes back and finds his own, which he is happy to find is the thickest of them all. So 2:30 comes, and Rostov tells the bishop to get up and pick up the files on the desk. The first stop they make is the boiler room, where Rostov makes the bishop throw the files into the furnace. Next, they go to the room that has the lost and found, and they grab a travel guide to Finland. Then Rostov takes him to a bright blue door, and it's the room holding all the silver from the very beginning of the book that him and Nina had found all those years ago. And he makes the bishop step inside. What are you going to do with me, he asks. I'm not going to do anything to you, says Rostov. I am never coming back. The bishop pleads with him, saying that it'll be weeks before anyone finds him. And Rostov says nonsense. He attends the daily meetings, and if he was listening during them, then he knows there's a banquet happening on Tuesday, and someone will find him then. So he closes the door and locks the bishop inside. It was 3 a.m. when he makes his way back up the stairs, and as he's walking up the stairs, he turns a corner, and a shiver goes up his spine, for just in front of him is the ghost of the one-eyed cat, who turns his blind eye to Rostov and disappears down the stairs. And Rostov likens this to a man named Admiral Lord Nelson, who was blind in one eye, and when his commander ordered a retreat, he held his telescope to his blind eye, continuing his attack on the Spanish Navy. So it's kind of like the cat is saying, like, keep fighting, Rostov. Don't back down. So the next day, Rostov goes about his day like every other day he has lived at the Metropole. He eats breakfast, goes downstairs to read the paper, he has lunch at the piazza, a drink at the bar, until finally having dinner at the Boyarsky that night. The only difference was that after dinner, he snuck into the coat room and borrowed a raincoat and a fedora from an American journalist. He goes back upstairs and finds his rucksack, in which he would only have the bare necessities. Gathering up his things, he paid one last visit to his study, saying goodbye to the smallest room he had ever inhabited, but in which the world still went on. And tipping his hat to the portrait of Helena, Rostov switches out the light. Then we jump to Paris, where at the same time Rostov was heading down to the lobby, Sophia was concluding her performance on stage. Afterwards, she goes to the dressing room and goes into the bathroom, where she immediately... She goes into the bathroom where she immediately starts undressing. She's leaving, taking off the beautiful dress Marina had made her, and changing into the pants and button-down shirt that Rostov had stolen from the Italian man. And then she took out some scissors and starts to cut her hair, taking the cut pieces and flushing them down the toilet. Then she took the vial from the barber shop, which was actually hair dye, and she dyed her little white strip of hair that had been there ever since her accident as a kid. She had had like a white strip growing in her hair. Then she throws her shoes and dress into the trash, but pockets Anna's choker. She puts the hat on, pulling it tightly over her head, and then sneaks out barefoot into the night. Sophia goes to the front of the concert hall, and pulling out the Paris travel guide that Rostov had marked on, she makes her way through the Paris streets, zigzagging along her way to the American embassy, making quick time to give her enough time to reach it before her absence is discovered. She makes her way to Richard Vanderwaal's apartment at the embassy, and he welcomes her with open arms, saying that he was expecting her. So they sit down, and Sophia says that Rostov had told her Richard would have something for her. To this, he gives her a package wrapped in paper, and on untying it, we find the Book of Montaigne, which Rostov had given to Richard to give Sophia. And inside, it's hollowed out and filled with all those gold coins that he had in the legs of the desk. Then Sophia empties out her knapsack and gives it to Richard, telling him that Rostov said he should cut the seam at the top of the straps. When he did so, Richard pulls out a piece of paper that was the diagram of that dinner with the Council of Ministers and the Presidium, and it had everyone's name, title, a description about everyone, and just like a detailed report about the night and things he had heard. Like he overheard talks about like nuclear arms, and it talks about the one guy Malenkov is supposed to be in like co-control with Khrushchev, but throughout the night you actually find out that it seems like Khrushchev is the one actually in control, and his right-hand man is actually this other guy, Malyshev. So Rostov, the spy, figuring out who's actually pulling the shots in Russia, he reads this and is like, oh yeah, we got him. But then he sees another piece of paper, and on it is a long sequence of 7-digit numbers. So Richard jumps up and asks his lieutenant who's there, how many girls are at the switchboard? When he tells him only 2 or 3, Richard is like, that's not enough. We need to get every person available with fingers on their hands. So we jump back to Moscow and Rostov, who's gone down to the lobby with his rucksack, and he sits in his normal spot and waits. He's just watching everyone walk by, and he just thinks about how normal a day it is at the Metropole, and he's at peace knowing that all of this is just part of a master plan. And while he's sitting there, that's when every telephone on the first floor of the Metropole starts ringing. About 30 phones ringing at once. And this creates a little bit of pandemonium. So the small night staff are running to the telephones. People in the bar walk out to see what's going on. And then people who had been woken up on the second floor were coming down to see what's going on. And in all the commotion, Rostov dons the coat and hat he had taken, shoulders his rucksack, and walks out of the hotel. So he escapes.
Yay!
In all the pandemonium. Yeah, so like the thing that he had given Richard was a set of like every single telephone number on the first floor of the Metropole. And he had a little note like, call all of these numbers at the same time at midnight so I can leave.
So that he knows that Sophia got there safe.
Yeah, it was also, hey, like, to know that she got there safe, also to give me a distraction to get out.
Yeah.
So that was like the end of the normal chapter. So now we're in the afterwards. We see Victor Stepanovich, Sophia's piano teacher, leaving his house. And he told his wife he has an appointment at midnight. So he goes out and catches a bus to the St. Petersburg station, and he waits at a cafe there. He says that he doesn't really know why he agreed to do this. It wasn't just for Sophia, whom he was so proud of at teaching, but it was for Rostov, whom he greatly admired, and he felt like it was just the right thing to do. So Rostov comes in and gives him a little red book and thanks Victor for whatever it is he's actually going to do. And then they order coffee and spend a little time chatting through the night. The next morning, at 11:30, 2 KGB officers arrive at the Metropole to question Rostov on an undisclosed matter, but they can't find him. Not in his room, the barbershop, the piazza. Emil and Andre are questioned, but they haven't seen him since last night. And they were going to question the manager, but he had not yet reported for work, a fact that was duly noted in his file. 2 more KGB officers come to conduct a more thorough search, but still nothing. No one knew where Rostov was. And then there was a rumor started going around the hotel staff that they had heard the KGB men mention that Sophia had also disappeared. So when Emil and Andre came together for their daily meeting, they asked each other if it was possible that Rostov had slipped off during the night. And Emil is just like, oh, no, it's not possible. But in the middle of their debate, a man from the mailroom shows up and gives them each a letter, with 3 other having already been delivered to the seamstress, the bar, and the concierge desk. Upon opening the letters, Emil and Andre pull out a letter of parting and thanks for their friendship, and also 4 gold coins. So they're ecstatic that Rostov has managed to escape, though a little bit sad.
Yeah.
And Emil makes the note to Andre. He's like, ugh, with Rostov gone and you have palsy of the hands, like, what's going to happen to me? And Andre was like, I don't have palsy of the hands. Like, all of...
It was a ruse!
Yeah, I was like, it was all a ruse because, like, you know, Rostov had to be in that room to get that information for Richard. So we then go to the Kremlin, where the chief administrator is interrupted by a man coming in saying that Sophia has gone missing in Paris, and when they went to question Rostov about it, they found him also missing. And then he goes into how they found the manager locked in the basement, and that Rostov had overtaken him at gunpoint, and he had shot the picture of Stalin and stolen things from the hotel's guests, like the coat and hat from the American journalists, where a man was seen wearing the same thing when boarding a train to Helsinki, and then discarded the clothes in a bathroom. And they knew that Rostov had stolen the Finnish man's passport and money, so they believed him to be escaping to Finland. So the chief administrator is like, good work, round up the usual suspects. We find out, though, that it was actually Victor who had boarded the train to Helsinki, and he was wearing the coat and the hat, which Rostov had given to him, and then he had discarded the coat and hat, and then he just, like, hopped back onto a train to Moscow.
Also, do you know who the chief administrator is?
I was trying to figure it out.
Osip.
Oh!
Yeah, because it mentions the scar on his face.
Okay, yeah. I read that, and I was just like, that has to be, like, some significant thing, and I was like, but yeah, I was like racking my brain. Yeah. I was like, I don't know who it is. Yeah, okay.
That makes sense then.
Osip.
Because he was like, he says something. Yeah, he said he knows it's a musician from the Moscow Conservatory, and then what's her name? And then Sophia, Alexander Rostov's kid. And he's like, So you kind of like, well, if you think he's going to Finland, investigate that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I was definitely just like, it's like, this has to be.
Now, to be
like
fair, I did have to
someone.
look it up, because I was like,
Okay.
I think that's Osip, because I remember him mentioning the scar on his, like, above his ear or something.
Mhm.
And it did say, like, the guy that comes in to make the report talks to the chief administrator, who is a balding bureaucrat in his early 60s,
Yeah.
if it's not for the scar above his left ear.
Mm.
Yeah.
God. Yeah, I was just like, he has to be like someone of like that we know of. but
So he's just like, go, Rostov.
I didn't
Yeah,
catch
Osip is very supportive of Rostov.
it.
Well, they became friends, so
Mhm.
Yeah.
otherwise he may not have been theirs.
Well, yeah.
Would have rounded him up.
We jump to the summer of 1954, where we see an old man in his 60s walking among the tall grass in Nizhny Novgorod province. Walking under the trees, he hears from above a voice ask where he's going. Stopping in his tracks, a boy of 10 and a girl of about 7 or 8 drop to the ground in front of him, and he asks if they would please show him the way to the old mansion that used to be in town, but it had one that had burned down decades ago. So they do, and our traveler thinks back of different literary heroes who have returned home only to leave it again soon after, like Odysseus and Robinson Crusoe. He says, is it because having been away from home for so long, the landscape is not as beautiful as they once remembered? Things become unrecognizable. But our traveler is not like this. Upon standing in front of the ruins of his former home, he smiles, for he has expected every aspect of what once was to have changed. So after this, he walks into the local village to the inn and asks for a room and something to eat. The woman there shows him to the tavern, and he makes his way to the back room. And there, in the corner, at a table for two, her hair tinged with gray, the willowy woman waited.
It's Anna.
No, it's Anna. So he's able to
together.
escape. Yeah. He escapes, goes to his hometown where Anna's waiting for him, and now they're going to live the rest of their lives.
Yep.
In peace, hopefully.
Hopefully.
So that's the end.
Right. Which he
That's
could
the
have
end.
left Russia, but it's his home. He's never going to
Yeah.
leave Russia.
Exactly. I think, yeah, that was one thing, because like I really liked the book and everything, and I was slightly disappointed that he didn't leave,
Mhm.
but I also knew that, like, yeah, this is totally like Rostov. Like
It would also be
wouldn't
really
leave.
hard for him to, like, leave.
No, he would never leave Russia. I mean,
Yeah,
just like
right.
before when he went to Paris, he came back.
Yeah, he came back because he was just like, this is my home
It's where he
and
wants to be.
everything. Yeah.
It's so sad that he doesn't get to be with Sophia, though.
I know. It's like, she's going to
America.
America, and now she's like, never gonna see you again, and everything. Ugh.
So I guess we are to assume that Nina's dead.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because she does
I
not
think-
mention it again.
I thought she was dead before. Yeah.
No, I mean, I thought she was dead, but we
Yeah.
said last episode, we're like, maybe it comes back.
Yeah,
But it
I
doesn't
would say
come
maybe
back.
it comes back.
No, Sophia's parents are dead.
Yeah.
They did.
They
Yeah, we
In
decided
Siberia.
We decided that a long time ago. I actually thought it would be really funny whenever it said, like, he walks into the tavern and everything. I was like, what if that woman was Nina? And he's like, oh, can I have a room? And can I get something to eat? And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's Nina. What are you doing here? Just
That would have been too much of a
working.
cliffhanger.
Yeah, I
And they would
know.
have been like, there has to be another book written. It's like, where has Nina been?
Where have you been all these years?
What's Nina's story?
Eh. I thought
My
she
husband
was,
died in the gulag, and
Yeah,
I've
which
been
I
on the
did
run.
think she was gonna be more of a prominent character. throughout the story.
Right. 'cause
Nina
she
really
was-
just served
as a
as
kid.
the
Yeah.
connection that would get Sophia.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mhm.
So they have a TV series on it on Paramount
Yeah.
Plus. So definitely going to be watching it this week.
Yep.
We'll see if it's
True to the book.
true to the book or not. Which hopefully it is because it's a series and not a movie.
I think it will be
so-
pretty close. They might change a couple things, but
I
I
like
feel like
the
it'll be pretty
actor.
close.
It's got Ewan McGregor as
Yeah, I love
Rostov,
Ewan
so I'm
McGregor.
excited.
I do like Ewan McGregor.
I love him.
He's got a mustache in this picture, so I'm
Yeah.
guessing it gets snipped.
Well, of course it gets snipped.
Yeah.
It does in the book.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it gets snipped.
I'm
in
sure
the
it will.
show.
What are y'all's ratings?
I would give this.
Oh, your rating.
Since we did it for
I-
Absolutely. What do you think?
I gave it a 4 on Goodreads.
I think a 4 as well. I thought it was a really enjoyable book. I like the humor. I like Rostov as a character. I mean, really, there weren't any characters that I disliked at all. I thought it was a
Really,
good book.
the whole last 2 sections we read saved this book's rating, I think. Because
Mhm.
the first, it was really like lengthy with his little side comments.
He just
and-
went on and on and on about things. That's the only thing I didn't like.
But then once Sophia came in the picture, I was like, okay, this is like enjoyable. This is fun. Like,
the introduction, which I think the entire beginning of the book, like you said with Nina and everything, that was all just build up for Sophia and this arc of him sort
which
of
it was
having
cute.
this family.
It was cute with Nina.
Yeah.
I think all the parts where there were like kids involved were fun.
I think the first part of the book wasn't as enjoyable as the rest of it. Yeah.
Which, I mean, it makes sense though, because like, you know, you get summoned to or sentenced to like living in this hotel. Like, even though he's like, I'm going to be positive about it, I'm sure deep down he's like, things aren't going to get better. Like, this is just my life from now on.
Once the
And
character
then
development started to happen, it got better.
That structure was kind of in the book. Like, we were like, is it going to get better? And then, you know, he meets Nina, and then, you know, Nina grows up, has Sophia,
Mhm.
and his life is just made better for him.
Yeah. I really do like how, I mean, we basically have an entire book just centered around one setting.
Right.
That
Of,
is
like,
cool.
The main, like where all of the main action
Right.
takes place is just in like one
And it's-
spot.
I imagine
And I
it's
really
very
like
hard
that.
to do as a
Yeah.
writer to like, this is it. This is your setting.
Yeah, like
They
everything.
don't go anywhere else.
They don't go anywhere else. I mean, there's obviously like mention of
of
a
like
few places.
far off places.
Yeah, but like every main thing that happens is like here at the hotel. I thought that was very well done and
Mhm.
everything. Because yeah, it's like it's hard. Like, what are you gonna? I mean,
But then at the same
like,
time,
460-page book.
the
just
Metropole
filled-
had everything he needed.
That's true.
There are like 2 restaurants, a bar,
A barber,
a barber,
a seamstress.
like he didn't need to leave the hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish there were actually.
I guess
more
unless he
places
had,
like
unless he
this.
like was having like a medical emergency himself, like
Yeah.
then he'd be in really big trouble.
I need a yeah, that's true. It's like you don't have a doctor.
But, you
on
know,
staff.
In Russian class with Katerina,
Yeah.
she would say, you know, doctors would come to
Yeah.
you, like
Yeah.
it wasn't.
You would
like,
have doctors making house calls. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you don't just go to the doctor; the doctor comes to you.
Yeah.
Katerina's our Russian professor.
I had a sort of off-topic thought just now about the one setting.
Yeah.
And I was immediately reminded of the movie Dunstan Checks In.
I've
You all
never
remember
seen that
I
movie.
don't know what that is.
Really?
I've never seen that. What's that?
Y'all
I'm
have never
guessing
heard of
it's
that?
about a hotel.
It is about a hotel.
Dunstan checks in.
Yes.
I've never heard.
Dunstan
What
Checks
kind of name
In.
is Dunstan?
1996 movie Dunstan Checks In. Can you guess what the movie's about?
He checks in and never checks out.
The main setting of the movie is the hotel.
Yeah.
Take a wild guess on what the plot is.
I feel like it's going to be totally wrong, whatever we guess, since you said wild guess.
He's a.
Give me a wild guess.
Does he never leave the hotel? That's it.
I mean, I think he eventually leaves the hotel at the end, but the main setting of the movie is the hotel.
He's a hermit who's living at the hotel and no one knows he's there.
Wrong.
He lives in the basement.
I have no idea.
This movie is about a jewel thief
Oh.
and an orangutan named Dunstan who checks into the hotel.
The orangutan
Yes.
Okay.
is the main character.
The orangutan is the jewel thief.
What?
He's forced into a life of thievery from
Oh, that's
his
like
owner.
Edgar Allan Poe, though. The orangutan, like.
He's forced into a life of
murdered that
thievery
guy.
from his owner. Yes. Amazing movie from
Have you not heard
1996.
I forgot what it's called,
I don't
honestly.
remember. It doesn't really ring any bells.
So
You
they
heard
like.
it here first,
I
folks.
gotta look
You
it up.
like A Gentleman in Moscow, you'll love Dunstan Checks
What?
In.
Is this like 90s?
96.
If you like monkeys.
I loved this movie when I was a kid. I mean, this was right up my alley.
Edgar.
I was 4 years old when this movie came
I'm feeling this wine, y'all. I can't even type. Oh, that's Murders in the Rue Morgue. Yeah, where they're like blaming everybody for murdering, but it was really the monkey.
out. It's a monkey?
See, I don't think I've ever read that one.
Sorry, I spoiled it for you. It's the monkey.
I think Edgar wrote about a monkey?
Yeah, so honestly, Edgar, he honestly loved writing like stuff that was like detective-y. So like the Purloined Letter, Murders in the Rue Morgue. And but he focused on the dark shit because that's what sold to the magazine. Like The Raven was like his number one thing. And he was like, I don't really like The Raven.
So I'm going to give y'all the plot of Dunstan Checks In really quick. Spoilers, guys. So Dunstan is an orangutan who is forced into a life of crime by his owner, Lord Rutledge.
Oh,
Lord
Mr. Rutledge.
Dunstan flees from Lord Rutledge and checks into the Majestic Hotel. Robert Grant, the manager of the hotel, and his son Kyle rescue Dunstan. Dunstan and Kyle cause chaos in the hotel, much to the dismay of staff and guests.
Okay, who's the actors? People we know?
Jason Alexander is, of course,
The orangutan.
no, he plays Robert Grant, the manager. It's the manager. And then I think the boy's name, who plays Kyle, is Eric Lloyd. He was a little boy in The Santa Claus.
Oh.
Oh.
Yes. So him and this orangutan.
Whenever you said that he escapes his owner and checks into the hotel, I was just imagining, okay, I definitely recognize that picture.
I do not recognize that.
But
I've never seen
it
this
before.
movie.
I loved
never
this
heard
movie
of this
when I was a
movie.
kid. It was so funny. Which it also reminds me of another movie called Jungle the Jungle, but we'll talk about that another time.
Is that the Tim Allen movie?
Yes.
I was literally about to bring that up because that's such a wild movie because that kid cuts his brakes. Is that the right movie? That's not Jungle to Jungle. Shit, that's the wrong movie.
It might be. But
No.
then we've also got another movie called Monkey Trouble. You ever heard of that one? I saw it too.
Isn't there an Ashley Olsen monkey movie?
Probably.
I'm pretty sure there is.
We're getting off topic.
topic.
We're getting off topic, but I'm thinking of another Olsen movie that was kind of like supposed to be like a scary ghost
Y'all don't
movie.
tune into OneLitPodcast for like an actual script. This is unscripted randomness.
Let's talk about more hotel movies. Home Alone 2? Hey.
Yeah, that's a hotel movie.
New
Yeah.
York. Anyway.
So, did you give your rating for this book?
She did not.
I'm pretty. I'm like, I'll say a 4.5.
Okay.
Just,
Higher.
I really liked it, and like I said earlier, like them having the setting, like everything just takes in a hotel. I thought that was really interesting, very well done,
Impressive.
and everything. Yeah,
It's very impressive.
very impressive.
Because, I mean, never once reading it was I, like, bored. Like,
yeah, there was,
you would be if you're just in the same setting for decades.
Yeah, like we. I mean, I know
The
we,
characters-
skipped a lot.
The side characters in this book are so important.
yes.
Or like really what made this book enjoyable because the relationships with them. If he was just by himself
Oh,
in
yeah.
the metropole, we would be
That would be really boring.
so bored.
There were so many side characters that were great.
But like Enil and
Andre,
like,
that little
they were
trio was
amazing.
Like, so cute.
the triumvirate,
Yeah.
they're great.
And the bishop was
The bishop being like, girl, like,
he was just a good
I hate
character
you.
to hate.
I hate you.
It's like that one little instance that happened, and then he just
Years ago, where he was
Rostov
like,
for the rest of his life.
he corrected him about the wine, right? He's
Yeah.
like, maybe you should suggest this wine.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, the first interaction between them was he had offered that couple a wine, and Rostov was like,
May I
actually,
suggest?
like, this wine would actually go better
With your meal.
And then, like, for the rest of the time, the bishop is just like,
I hate
your
him.
guts.
I hate him.
I'm
Thinks
gonna
he's
make
better
your
than
life-
me.
Yeah, make your life a living hell. So, yeah, I thought it was definitely good.
Thank you, Amor Towles. Oh,
Anyways, Andrea, tell us about our next book.
All right, y'all. For the month of February, we are going to be reading Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates.
just Butcher, not the Butcher. It's just
If you
Butcher.
if you look up The Butcher on Kindle, you're going to find a bunch of sexy stories about butchers.
Sexy story about butchers.
So yes, it is just Butcher.
As women, is being a butcher a sexy profession?
Not particularly.
Then why are there so many books that are all smutty about it?
Now, there was a weird one. I think it was Butcher, but it was a hockey one.
Ah.
But guys, that's not what we're going to be
It
reading.
probably was still sexy though.
We're going to be reading Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates. I'm going to give you a little rundown. The little description here in the book says, in this harrowing story based on historical documents, we follow the career of Dr. Silas, oh my gosh, I don't know what the last name is, Aloysius Ware, the father of gyno-psychiatry, as he ascends from professional anonymity to, sorry.
Anonymity?
I'm lit. So professional. Yes.
Anonymity?
Anonymity. Thank you. To national renown. Humiliated by a procedure gone terribly wrong, Ware is forced to take a position at the New Jersey Asylum for Female Lunatics. There, he's allowed to continue his practice unchecked for decades, making a name for himself by focusing on women who have been neglected by the state. Women he subjects to the most grotesque modes of experimentation.
Can we pause for a moment? What is gyno-psychology?
He's the father of gyno-psychiatry.
Which is what? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Women's psychiatry.
Well, 'cause
I
I'm
think it's going to be
thinking of-
related to like women having mental issues connected to their anatomy. I feel like.
I will look it up.
She's looking it up.
That can't be a real thing.
Gynecological psychiatry, also known as reproductive psychiatry, is a specialized field of mental health that focuses on women's reproductive health and mental health.
Yes.
So it's a combination of OBGYN and psychiatry.
Interesting.
Which makes sense because, I mean, there are a lot of like gynecological illnesses that can like make you feel bad in your head. Like,
Yeah, so it's
postmenstrual
there's another
syndrome,
it says what does
endometriosis.
it treat? There's like pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, reproductive loss. So it's
That makes
about
more
like
sense.
yeah, so it's talking about like your mood changes. I mean, postpartum depression is a huge
Right.
thing. Menopause, emotional changes, reproductive loss is another thing. So like mental health issues related to reproductive loss and everything.
Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. That's not how I was thinking about it, but yeah, I get it now.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for explaining. And he tortures them?
Well, wait. As he begins to establish himself as a pioneer of 19th century surgery, Ware's ambition is fueled by his obsessive fascination with a young Irish indentured servant named Bridget, who becomes not only Ware's primary experimental subject, but also the agent of his destruction. Narrated by Ware's oldest son, Jonathan, who has repudiated his father's brutal legacy, Butcher is a unique blend of fiction and fact, a nightmarish voyage through the darkest regions of the American psyche, conjoined in its startling conclusion with unexpected romance. What?
You said repudiated. You said repudiated.
Yeah, Olivia just looked at me and we
He
locked
just
eyes for a
looked at each
second.
repudiated. God, guys. I've had a lot of this wine tonight.
It's a strong wine.
It was funny. It was funny. Good.
Repudiated.
Y'all know what I mean.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
So it sounds like an interesting novel.
Which also, I looked in the sleeve of this book, the jacket. This woman's written a ton of books.
Joyce Carol Oates, she's been around a long time.
Yeah, which I've never really heard of her. I haven't looked into any of her books.
Yeah, she's been around a long time.
Yeah, there's like
I haven't read anything by her.
There's like 30 or 40
But,
books
like,
listed.
I remember my mom having books from Joyce Carol Oates, so like she's been around a long time.
Yeah, her picture's on the back of the book, and she is looking spooky.
Honey, that's rude.
No, I'm saying the way that the picture's framed, this looks like a scary book. It's a compliment that it's giving off a spooky vibe from the cover.
Yeah. If you want to know more about her, here on the back it tells you about her. Joyce Carol Oates is a recipient of the National Humanities Medal, the National Book Critics Circle Ivan Sandroff Lifetime Achievement Award, the National Book Award, the Jerusalem Prize for Lifetime Achievement, the Prix Femina, and the Sino del Duca World Prize. She has been nominated several times for the Pulitzer Prize. She has written some of the most enduring fiction of our time, including the national bestsellers We Were the Mulvaneys, Blonde, and New York Times bestseller The Falls. She has been a member of the American Academy of Arts and Letters since 1978 and was inducted into the American Philosophical Society in 2016. She currently divides her teaching time among Princeton, New York University, and Rutgers University. So she's a very busy woman.
Yes.
So we are reading that for this next week, and we'll be recording the next episode next week. What are we reading to?
Oh, yeah. Great question. From the beginning up to chapter Fistula.
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 Is it fistula or fistula?
You know what? I don't know.
I think it's fistula.
It's
Gotta
probably-
watch out for that fistula oblongata.
It's probably Fistula.
It's fistula.
What?
Fish?
Fish. Fistula.
Y'all,
Fistula.
it starts with an F. It's on page like 80 something.
And this is supposed to be like, this stuff actually happened.
Huh?
This stuff in the book actually happened because it's the guy's son
Yes.
is retelling the stories.
Are you saying this is based on a true story?
Yeah.
This book is?
Yeah.
Oh.
Based on a real guy.
I didn't know that.
You not listen to her read the thing.
Just partially listening. But
I just saw this thing about
I
Doctor
must have
Who on here.
misheard then. I didn't know that this was based on a true story.
Never mind, I'm stupid.
What?
Never mind, I'm stupid.
What'd you say?
I'm too lit for this.
What?
I said I didn't see this thing about Doctor Who.
You didn't see this thing about Doctor Who?
But then I was reading it and I was like, it's a Doctor Who does this. I was like, why is she mentioning Doctor Who?
This based on true story involves Doctor
No,
Who.
it doesn't. Ignore me. Just pick up the...
Can I see that for a moment? Let me see the book.
Just read the book.
Not the whole thing, if you want to stay with us.
Sorry, guys. I don't know. This stuff is strong. I really haven't drunk that much. It's 14.5, y'all. Have mercy on me.
Butcher is a unique blend of fiction and fact. Okay.
Yeah,
So I'm sure there was a doctor that did all this stuff
Yeah,
to
did
figure
all
out.
this.
Interesting.
But not like a butcher. I mean, I'm sure some people got butchered, but...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we'll find out.
Yeah, so if y'all can't handle gore and
I'm sure it's going to be very
Probably.
gory.
I'm sure stuff pertaining to depression and then also
Mutilation of female body parts.
female body parts. So if you can't handle, if you get triggered by, since
Squeamish.
we've also learned that gyno psychiatry mentions stuff about reproduction, postpartum reproduction loss. If y'all get triggered by stuff like that, then maybe read with caution or skip it.
If you read, just stop at page 86, right before fistula.
Fistula. Anyways.
Joyce Carol, I'm so sorry. I can't read your
it's
dust covered right now.
You heard it here, folks. She can't read.
So that's what we're reading next.
All right.
Moving
I'm
on.
excited.
You're excited?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
I'm interested in it.
I think it'll be a fun read.
Yeah.
All right, on to the next.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if anybody read anything else or wrote anything else.
I finished Iron Flame.
Yeah.
I've not read anything, but I've been brainstorming on writing.
We've both been brainstorming on writing. But yeah, I finished Iron Flame.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure if anybody that reads that knows that Onyx Storm is releasing on Monday or Tuesday. So I'm just waiting for that to come out and ruin my life for a few days.
You've got to read it before your friend Julie does.
I'm not going to read it before Julie does. She's taking a day off of work to read this book.
What?
Yes.
Wow.
Because the emotional damage, I'm sure, is going to be crazy.
So, we're going to a little bit. For this week, I read the book If Cats Disappeared from the World.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that last
Yeah.
time.
So it's called If Cats Disappeared from the World by Genki Kawamura. So a little summary of what that's about. The narrator has been having really bad headaches for a while. So he goes and finds out that he has stage 4 cancer and there's nothing they can do about it. So he's basically just waiting to die. So he goes home and he's confronted by the devil who tells him that actually he's going to die tomorrow.
Oh, shoot.
But he will strike a deal with the narrator, and every day he makes something disappear from Earth, he will gain 1 extra day to live. So what ensues is a heartfelt journey where the narrator tries to decide what he can and can't live without to try to give him more time to live. And it's funny, it's heartbreaking. I definitely cried over the cats in this book.
Cats?
Yeah. There's multiple cats. So there's 2 cats.
And he sacrifices them to the devil?
No. No, he doesn't.
Good, okay.
You're crying over the cats and not this man?
I did.
Dying of stage 4 cancer?
One of the cats' named is Lettuce.
Oh my god, of course.
And then there's another one who looks just like Lettuce, and they named him Cabbage. It's so cute. But yeah, so I cried over the cats because, like, I have 2 cats and they're my babies. So just thinking about them, like, not existing, like cats not existing in the world, it just made me sad. But it was really good. It's less than 200 pages, so it's really short, and I finished it in like a day, and it's on Kindle Unlimited. And I found out that they made a movie of it in 2016. I mean, it's like a Japanese film.
Like an indie film? Or is it like an official?
It's like an actual like Japanese film. So I'm gonna have to try to find it. I think I can only find it on YouTube though, because I kind of looked it up, and I'm just like one of those things that I might just have to watch on YouTube.
Probably just with subtitles.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was good. It was funny. Sad. So I recommend it.
Cool.
Ready for news?
Ready for news.
Ready for news. All right, so this week for news, this was something that Andrea actually sent me. So I'll tell you all about it. But this popular YouTuber, Call Me Chris, is under fire by the booktok community, which is not dead.
It's alive.
Apparently.
It's back from the grave.
Back from the grave.
As of recording this, it is back from the grave.
Yeah, as of like noon today.
Yeah, exactly. But she's under fire because of her comments on smut and dark romance books. So she basically made a video, quote unquote, trying to poke fun of really popular books that are popular with the booktok crowd, but it fell flat and people weren't happy about it. like, I didn't get to watch the actual video because she took it down, but some of the problems was she was having, like, that I just kind of, like, picked from other people's, like, TikTok videos on it. She was, like, using other people's content in her videos and then just bashing them for liking what they liked reading or, like, recommended to other people. She picked all these books to read when apparently in her video she said she probably isn't going to be into the smutty romance. Like, why are you reading something that you know you're probably not going to like in the first place?
Right.
And then kind of just the general, like, bashing of content that to her was supposed to be funny, but it wasn't. And I think one thing was, like, she's saying, like, ooh, all these dark romances depicting, like, taboo sex is harmful to a sexual assault survivor. And I was, like, trying to watch, like, a little, like, videos, and some people were saying how, like, reading or writing dark romance books can actually be, like, healing for some people who've experienced sexual assault or having a stalker or whatever, because it's, like, written in a different light, and it makes it to where you can, like, take back that control that was taken from you.
Right.
And, you know, like, it's not the same for everyone, and you might not be able to cope with dark romances. Like, but, like, if you don't like something, just don't completely bash it, because there's, like, such a huge, like, there is, like, such a huge fan base for these books.
I don't know if you wrote this down yet.
Yeah.
But she made the comment that people that read books like this need to go outside and touch the grass.
Yes. Yeah, that was another thing that she mentioned. It's just like, y'all need to go
and
outside,
get therapy.
touch grass, get therapy. And it's just like, okay, like, don't tell me what to do, basically. Yeah, so there was just a lot of stuff about these books that she was bashing, just, like, the books themselves, and then also the people who like reading stuff like that. So, yeah, there were a lot of people who were just like...
And I know she used those clips without a lot of their permission.
Yeah,
just like...
yeah, exactly. That was one of the things I mentioned. Like, she took other people's video content that they made, and she used it in her videos.
Which I think is honestly one of the most shocking things about this, is that she did that after how long she's been on YouTube.
Right. I'm a fan of Call Me Chris. I mean, her videos are enjoyable, especially when it's with Selena. Those are some of my favorites.
That's the only time I like Call Me Chris. I'm going to be honest.
You would think that she would know better.
Yeah. I mean, you're supposed to, like, ask your sources, like, are you okay with me using you for this video?
Which I don't know how she actually feels about it, but from all her videos, I feel like they're very lighthearted for the most part, and she probably meant this to be lighthearted, but it was taken the wrong way for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, of course, some people are going to be offended because it is a huge fan base. I think it goes both ways. You know, she probably shouldn't have said a few things, but also the people attacking her are probably saying some stuff that they shouldn't say either. I would assume.
So let's rephrase this. Me and Olivia read this stuff, and we're going to read more of this stuff.
And that's okay.
Do we need therapy?
I don't think so.
Do we need to go
probably
touch some grass?
I think we all...
I don't need to touch grass.
I know, like, when I saw that comment, a lot of people were commenting, he's like, joke's on her. I read outside.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we read dark romances on here. Like, me and Andrea, like, love smutty books and everything. And it's just like, that's great for, like, us, because we enjoy it. Like, if you don't enjoy stuff like that,
we
don't
strive for that kind of, like, I mean, you have to be able to differentiate.
It's all in good fun. Yeah.
We're not, I'm like, Hayden, I want you to do all this stuff to me, or she's not going to her. I'm like, this is what I want. Like,
there's a line.
We know, like, this is, like, fantasy. Like,
some of the things that we've covered on this podcast are horrific.
Yeah.
But it's also in good fun.
Yeah, it's like, I love smutty dark romances because it's just like, yeah, like some of it is so hilarious, and I'm just like,
it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Like, this wouldn't happen, especially, like I've said before, I love sentient object romances because they're ridiculous and so funny, and like things are coming alive.
Call Me Chris would have a conniption if she even talked about sentient object.
Yeah.
She'd be like, that's weird. Like, I know there's one that's like a door. It's like unhinged or something.
Yeah.
It's about a door.
It's about a door. I read one that was like these Easter peeps that came alive, and that one was hilarious. But like, I love it just because of how ridiculous it is. But like, it's hilarious, and I love it. And like, other people don't, and that's completely fine.
There's a lot of people that wouldn't enjoy that.
I think
that's okay.
the biggest overstep here is that she said, if you read this, like,
You need therapy.
you need
She's
therapy.
She's
Yeah.
judging.
Exactly.
Like, that's intense to say.
It's not nice.
I'm also trying to get
like,
back
if
to
you
that.
like this, you need psychological help. Like, that's a really hard thing.
Yeah.
Like, really harsh thing to say to a huge community of people
Yeah.
who are just like us, that just like read it for fun. They're not reading it because
They're into it.
I
Yeah.
love this.
Yeah.
I want to do this.
Someone to chase me through a cornfield and implant this corn inside of me.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Nobody wants that.
Yeah.
But it's entertaining to read.
Exactly.
Yeah, I would almost think of it as like one of those really bad, gory horror movies, you know? It's just a good
Right.
time. It's meant to be entertainment.
That has like a cult following that people watch over
Right.
and over again.
Yeah.
Like, that was just entertaining.
But at the end of it, just stick to what you like. If you know you're not gonna like something, then just don't read it, and don't shit on other stuff that people like.
Right. I mean, she could have made this video, read part of the books, and then been
Yeah.
like, I don't like this, but
Yeah.
I know there are people that like this.
Yeah.
But I personally can't read it because maybe, I don't know. She mentioned being like sexual assault victims, like this would be hard on them. Like, I don't know if that's in her experience.
That's
Or
what a
not.
trigger warning is for.
Right. And before you open a book like
It
this,
has
there is a list
List.
of trigger warnings. We've gone over the books that we've read. Every smut book we've read
Yeah.
has a trigger warning page that's like a mile long.
Yeah. Anytime we read any smut on here and we talk about it, we always read the trigger warning list at the very beginning.
Right.
So-
So you know what you're getting into. These people that electively go out and buy this book or download it on their Kindle, like, they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
So it's not like if you're a sexual assault survivor, you know what you're dealing with already.
Mhm.
And if you read these trigger warnings, you're like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
Like,
So you shouldn't read it.
You
So I'm
put
not
it
gonna read
down
it.
and you walk away.
like, it's not like it's like you're almost saying they don't have any agency. Like, they can't differentiate. Like, this is not something I should read. This is something I should read after reading this like
Yeah.
massive list.
Like you should know what you're
Like,
able to handle.
You're already upset about that assault like that weighs so heavily on your heart. Like, you're not gonna pick up a book and say this has like mentions of dubious consent or like things like that. You're not gonna be like, oh yeah, this is
yeah,
right up my alley.
I'm gonna
This is
read
what I
this.
really need to read right now.
Yeah. And like I said, there were some people saying that like, oh, it's actual, like I think one of the
Right. I read
videos
that,
that
too.
I did watch, it was of a girl like who had been a sexual assault survivor.
Right.
And she was just like, this happened to me, but I read and write dark romances where stuff like this happens. I don't know who this YouTuber is. This is the first time ever hearing of her. So what happened in the TikTok community? I mean, she did come out with a video like apologizing and everything, obviously. And
But
like
she
I said,
has deleted the video.
yeah, like I said, she deleted the video, like the original video, so I actually didn't get to watch it. So all of my information is basically just going through TikTok, trying to watch like other people's comments on the video and trying to like piece together like what actually happened and like what
Yeah.
people have been like saying about it. So that's where my stuff came in.
Now, if you're unlike Call Me Chris and you don't want to touch grass and go to therapy, join us next month for our effing February segment, where at the end of each episode, we are going to go back to reading a smut book
Yay!
and having Hayden react.
Multiple smut books.
4 smut books.
Yeah, we're gonna be doing it each Sunday. in February, just for, Valentine's Day is this month and everything. So we're going to have our little romance.
And be on the lookout. We are talking about adding video as a medium for this podcast to be coming out. So our YouTube videos may actually be us in person. So you'll get to see my actual face when they tell me all of this.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens.
So get excited for that. Get excited for our next book, Butcher, that we're going to be reading next. Do you want to tell everyone our socials, and then we'll get out of here?
Yep. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok, for at least now, at OneLitPod. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I believe that's OneLitPod, and then our Spotify is under OneLitPodcast. If you want to submit something for effing February,
if you have written just even like a 2-paragraph little short story, we would be happy to read it on the podcast.
We want to read it.
We are there.
Please send us
Submit anything you've got.
And if you're not in this month, we can read, romance.
Just regular romance.
Regular romance is fine.
Even if it's just like a small little short story, I'd be down.
Yeah. So you can submit those to us at onelitpod@gmail.com. onelitpod@gmail.com. And then we'll read it for the episode.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
Anything else before we close out?
I don't think so.
All right. So y'all read your chapters, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.